It started with the silence. Not the quiet kind, the kind that hums too loud. The kind that crawls under your skin and builds a nest. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion. 2 babies born premature, both needing constant care. I was surviving on cold coffee and baby monitor alarms. The days bled together in a blur of bottles, late-night feedings, and the sterile blue light of hospital NICUs. But the silence between us, it wasn't from fatigue. It was strategic. She hadn't held the twins more than 5 times in the first 2 weeks. Said she felt numb, that she needed space, that the hormones were wrecking her. I swallowed all that. I gave her room. I handled the crying, the bottle sterilizing, the doctor calls. I gave her everything, and she gave me nothing but that vacant stare, like I was a stranger who showed up in her house by mistake. 3 weeks after the twins came home, she started going out again. Said she needed to breathe. I didn't question it at first. I wanted her to heal, to feel like herself. But every time she left, she came back, lighter. She'd stand in the doorway like she was waiting for applause. No guilt in her eyes, just detachment. A chill that didn't match the warm summer nights. Then one evening, while she was supposedly out driving to clear her head, I walked into the nursery and saw the baby monitor blinking red. I checked the screen, and instead of the babies, it showed static. The camera had been unplugged. Strange, I thought, why would she unplug it? But when I went to plug it back in, I noticed something wedged behind the changing table. A hotel receipt. Cheap place, 20 minutes away. 1 night, 2 guests. Her name was on it, printed clean across the top. I stared at it, not in shock, but in a stillness I've never felt before. Like the part of me that should scream just folded. I picked up the receipt and sat down on the floor. I listened to the twins breathe. I listened to the nothing else. That night, she came back just after 1 a.m., hair still wet from a shower she didn't take here. She dropped her keys like she owned the night. She didn't even notice me sitting there in the dark. When I flicked on the light, she flinched. "Where were you?" I asked, voice steady. Not cold. Not loud. Just steady. She blinked. Too many times. "I was at Walgreens. You needed formula, remember?" I held up the receipt. Her face didn't crack. Not once. She took a breath, crossed her arms, and said, "You went through my stuff? I found it. Behind the changing table. You didn't even try to hide it well." She tilted her head, gave a half smile. Not the soft kind, the kind that says she already moved on and didn't think I'd catch up. "So what, you want to play detective now?" That was the first time I realized she wasn't scared. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't sorry. "You left me with 2 newborns," I said. "You left me to do everything. And you're out screwing around in hotel rooms?" She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I needed to feel like a person again. Not just some cow chained to crying kids and your needy energy. You should be thanking me for not walking out sooner." It wasn't the betrayal that stunned me, it was the disrespect. The way she minimized it all, like family was a coat she could toss when the weather changed. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I told her to leave. Right then. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. She didn't even look at the twins asleep in the next room. She walked out with her phone, her bag, and the coldest silence I've ever heard. And just like that, I was alone with our newborn twins, still in diapers, their lullaby still playing softly through the walls. She didn't leave a note. Not even a lie to cover the hole she burned through our lives. No words. No regret. Just a door that never opened again. It's strange how fast a human soul can shift. One moment, you're a husband, a partner, a teammate in a fight for sleep and sanity. The next, you're just a man with 2 tiny lives depending on him and 1,000 questions beating in his skull like hammers. The morning after she vanished, I sat in the kitchen, rocking one twin with my foot while trying to warm a bottle with shaking hands. I was running on fumes and rage. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking out like she was late for a casual lunch, not leaving her children fatherless in her heart. My phone buzzed. A text. I nearly dropped the bottle trying to grab it. But it wasn't her. It was her sister, Laura. "What's going on?" "Amanda just showed up here with a suitcase and said not to tell you anything." That hit like a crowbar to the chest. She ran to Laura? After everything? I called. No answer. Called again. Straight to voicemail. Then a text came through. "I'm done. Don't contact me. I need space from all of this." All of this. Like it was noise. Like I was noise. Like her own children were just another part of the chaos she was discarding like used tissue. By noon, it got worse. Laura texted again. This time, it was a photo. A picture of Amanda, at a coffee shop, sitting across from a man in a baseball cap. Not touching. Not kissing. But the kind of stare they were sharing wasn't friendly. It was layered. Familiar. Like a private language in the shape of eye contact. Laura wrote, "That's not a cousin. That's not a friend." She brought him with her. I didn't know this man. I didn't know his name. I didn't even have the strength to hate him yet. But I knew he was the reason she'd been bathing at odd hours and running errands for hours without buying anything. The reason my babies were sleeping in their mother's absence. And I was Googling how to treat diaper rash at 3 a.m. alone. I had to pull myself together. I had no time for grief. The twins were crying again. I held one on each arm, fed them, burped them, changed them. Like clockwork. Like a machine. But something in me was cracking. Around 5 p.m. I made the worst call of the day. I called her parents. Her mom picked up. I didn't even get a hello, just, "She's safe. Don't bother her." That's when the rage clawed through my ribs. "She left her children," I said, trying not to raise my voice. "She didn't take a walk. She disappeared." Her mom was calm. Too calm. "She needs time to think. She's under a lot of stress." "So am I." I snapped. "But I'm here. I didn't run away to play house with some guy in a coffee shop." Silence. Then her dad took the phone and, in a tired voice, said maybe if you'd been more emotionally available, she wouldn't have felt the need to find comfort elsewhere. I laughed. Not a real laugh. A broken, breathless one. "So it's my fault?" "I'm just saying people don't cheat in happy homes." I almost dropped the phone. My hands were numb with fury. She left me with our newborn twins and ran off to her lover. No words, no regret. While I'm losing sleep saving our babies, she chose lust over family. This isn't just betrayal, it's pure disrespect for everything sacred. He hung up. They all chose her. Even as she abandoned everything she was supposed to protect, they backed her like she was the victim. Like the twins were a footnote. Like I was just background noise in her freedom story. I looked down at my kids, their chests rising and falling so softly, so unaware. I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "You didn't deserve this. I won't let you feel her absence." But inside I felt the hole growing. Sharp. Black. Bottomless. And I knew this was only the beginning point. 2 days passed. The twins were on opposite feeding schedules now, like they were conspiring to make sure I never sat down for more than 10 minutes. My arms were sore. My back felt like it was splitting. But the worst pain wasn't physical. It was silence. She hadn't reached out once. Not a single call to check on her kids. Not a message to ask if they were okay. It was like cutting the cord from her womb also severed the thread of responsibility in her soul. That morning I tried calling again. Just once. Not because I wanted her back, I needed to say one thing. I needed to ask one question. Something I had been chewing on in the dark every night. She didn't pick up. But an hour later I got a message. "Stop harassing me. I don't want to talk. Get over it. Get over it." I wanted to smash the screen, but I couldn't afford another broken thing in this house. So I sat down and breathed. Just breathed. While one twin gnawed on his pacifier and the other hiccuped in his sleep. Then something unexpected happened. There was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. No deliveries. No appointments. I looked through the peephole and froze. It was him. The man from the coffee shop. Baseball cap. Cocky posture. A face like he thought he belonged in my world. I opened the door just enough to block the inside of the house. He smiled, actually smiled, and said, "Hey, man. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. My jaw tightened. My pulse throbbed in my ears. "I'm not here to cause problems," he said. "Amanda's not ready to talk, but I thought maybe I could help smooth things over." I blinked slowly. "Are you serious?" He had the audacity to nod. "You seem like a good guy. Just got caught in the middle of something. Amanda's been unhappy for a long time." I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "You know she is twins? Infants?" I asked. He nodded again like he was discussing a TV show he vaguely remembered. "She told me," he said. "But look, she's trying to figure out her life. It's complicated. Let me make it simple for you," I said. "You're standing on the doorstep of a man raising 2 babies alone. The woman you're shacking up with walked out of here like they were grocery bags she forgot in the car. You think you're fixing something? You're not. You're breaking it deeper. His expression shifted, just a little. Enough to show he hadn't expected resistance. I'm not trying to fight, he said, hands up like I was the unstable one. I just thought. You thought wrong. Don't come back here. Don't call. Don't text. You don't belong in this story. He held my gaze for a beat longer than I liked, then turned and left like this was just another errand. I watched him walk down the sidewalk, every step a matchstick in my spine. The moment the door closed behind me, I had to sit. My legs were shaking, because now I knew the worst part. This wasn't just about her. He wasn't some secret mistake in the shadows. She'd brought him into the sunlight, into our reality. She gave him enough confidence to show up at my house like he was the messenger of peace. She didn't just cheat. She passed the torch of her lies to someone else, and that man thought I was the one who needed calming down. I stood up, looked around the house. Bottles drying on the counter. Toys scattered on the floor. 2 tiny lives breathing quietly in the next room. I whispered to myself, for the first time since she left, she's not coming back. Not ever. And for the first time, I wasn't just scared. I was ready. 3 days later, a letter arrived. Not a message. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. As if she thought putting her betrayal on paper would somehow make it softer, more forgivable. The envelope was sealed with one of those cheap gold stickers people use for wedding invitations. My stomach turned at the irony. I opened it with one hand, the other bouncing one of the twins in a carrier strapped to my chest. The letter smelled like her perfume, intentional, no doubt. It read, "I'm sorry things had to go this way. I didn't plan for it to happen like this. I just lost myself. The house, the crying, the constant pressure. You changed. I changed. I couldn't breathe anymore. I know you'll be mad, but please believe me, I never wanted to hurt anyone. I'm trying to find happiness again. I hope one day you can understand." No mention of the babies. Not a word. Not their names, not a question, not a single drop of concern for the 2 humans who came from her blood and bones. Just an abstract apology wrapped in self-pity and perfume. Like she was the tragic figure in some novel and I was the cold-hearted villain holding her back. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal or the deliberate erasure of the twins from her narrative. It was like they were too inconvenient to mention. Too real. Too loud for her fantasy. I crumpled the letter and tossed it straight into the trash without hesitation. Later that night, I called Laura again. Not because I wanted her help, I didn't. But I needed answers. Laura answered on the first ring, voice low, cautious. "Please tell me," I said. "Did she ever talk about the twins? Even once?" There was a pause. Then Laura said, carefully, she said it was too painful. That thinking about them made her feel trapped. Trapped. That word did something to me, like a jolt behind the ribs. She used our children as an excuse, as a prison sentence, as the reason she needed to run into another man's arms instead of stepping up as a mother. I didn't say anything. I just hung up. But life wasn't going to let me dwell in anger. The twins were both running fevers by morning. Panic replaced fury as I rushed them into the pediatrician's office. One in each arm, both burning up and whimpering like tiny furnaces in distress. The doctor ran tests, told me it was likely a viral infection. Nothing dangerous, just uncomfortable. But I couldn't stop shaking. I kept thinking, what if something had happened while she was gone? What if they had gotten worse and she wasn't even reachable? What kind of mother gambles with her own children's lives like that? After we got home, I stayed up all night again, taking turns holding cold cloths to their foreheads, feeding them in shifts, whispering stories they were too young to understand. Anything to make them feel safe. And somewhere around 4 a.m., with both of them finally asleep in their bassinets, I sat on the floor and cried. I didn't cry when she left. I didn't cry when I found the receipt or saw her with him or got that letter filled with empty sorrow. But seeing my babies sick and knowing their mother had chosen freedom over their safety, that shattered something sacred in me. I realized that night I wasn't mourning her anymore. I was mourning the idea of her. The person I thought she was. The woman I thought would walk through fire for her children, not sprint into someone else's bed the second the heat rose. The Amanda I loved? She died the day she unplugged the baby monitor and packed her bag. What's left now is just a ghost wearing her face. By the end of the week, I was operating like a soldier on the front line. No room for breakdowns, no time for second-guessing. Wake, feed, clean, soothe, repeat. My phone stayed on silent. I stopped checking for messages. I stopped waiting for anything. But the world didn't stop. One morning, while changing diapers and watching a pot of formula boil over on the stove, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring, then again, and again. Fourth time I picked up. A woman's voice, clipped and businesslike, said, "Mr. Carter? I'm calling from Family Services. There's been a report filed regarding the care and safety of your children." My stomach dropped. I grabbed the edge of the counter. What? It's a routine investigation. Nothing to panic about. We're required to follow up on any report made concerning infants in the home. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. She continued, "We'll need to schedule a home visit within the next 48 hours. I hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't need to guess who filed the report. There was only one person with a motive vicious enough to twist reality like that. She left. She abandoned them. But now she was trying to paint me as the unstable one? I paced the kitchen, rage rising in waves. My mind was racing. Had I missed something? Had the house looked messy? Had I taken too long to get them to the doctor? No. I was doing everything. Alone. And still it wasn't enough? 2 days later, a woman in a gray blazer showed up at the door with a clipboard and fake sympathy in her voice. I let her in. The twins were asleep, and the house smelled like lavender wipes and bottle sterilizer. Everything was clean, organized, safe. She walked through each room, checked everything from the formula expiration dates to the water heater temperature. She glanced at the babies, scribbled notes, nodded approvingly. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Is their mother still living here?" I looked her dead in the eye and said she left them. "I haven't seen her in over a week. She hasn't called once." She nodded. "I understand. She made the report." I clenched my fists. Not out of fear. Out of disgust. She had the nerve to report me while playing house with another man? She left our children and still tried to rewrite the story in her favor? "She said she was concerned about your mental health," the woman added gently, like she was trying not to offend. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so warped, so absurd that it felt like a joke from a badly written show. "My mental health?" I said. "I'm the one still here." The caseworker left after an hour. She told me there were no red flags, that the report would be closed. But the fact that she had come at all stuck to me like grease I couldn't wash off. That night, I did something I hadn't done since before the twins were born. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and labeled it Evidence. I uploaded the hotel receipt, screenshots of texts, the letter, pictures of the twins, timestamps, medical receipts. I documented everything. Not out of paranoia. Out of preparation. Because something in my gut told me this wasn't just abandonment anymore. This was war. She was trying to ruin me to protect the fairy tale she built on lies and ego. And if she wanted a clean slate that badly, she was willing to burn the truth to ash to get it. But I wasn't going to let her. She gave me a new role the day she walked out, not just father. Protector. 2 days later, I got the message that changed everything. It came from an unknown number. No introduction. Just a single sentence, you don't know the half of it. I stared at it, unsure whether to laugh, ignore it, or prepare for another grenade. I replied, "Who is this?" The typing dots blinked, stopped, then reappeared. "My name is Rachel. I'm his ex." I knew exactly who he was. The man with the baseball cap. The one who walked onto my porch with the arrogance of someone who thought he had the whole story. The one Amanda ran off with. I sat down, hands shaking. My pulse spiked. She kept typing. We were together 4 years. Living together. He told me Amanda was just a friend going through a divorce. He left me the day after she moved in with him. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Then I asked, "Are you sure it's the same guy?" She sent a picture. It was him. Same cap. Same smirk. Sitting on a park bench with Amanda curled into his side like they were teenagers in a music video. The caption was dated 2 days ago. Rachel added, "He's done this before. More than once. Always finds women when they're vulnerable. Amanda isn't the first, but she might be the first to burn everything behind her for him." I didn't respond immediately. My head was spinning. Then she sent one more message. "He's a manipulator. He isolates them. He makes them feel special, chosen. But it doesn't last. Once he's bored, he moves on. That's why I left. Just thought you should know who's near your kids." Something snapped into place. All those odd shifts in Amanda's behavior. The sudden detachment. The vanishing empathy. The way she walked out without a single backward glance. She wasn't just escaping me. She was being rewritten. I stared at the photo again. Not because of him, but because of her eyes. She looked vacant. No spark. Just a hollowed-out version of the woman I once knew. Like someone had scooped the soul out of her and left the shell behind. And yet I felt no sympathy. Because no matter who whispered what in her ear, she made the choice to vanish. To betray. To erase her children. Couldn't blame him entirely. She had to climb into that car. She had to drive away. And now she was exactly where she wanted to be. Or so she thought. Later that night, I called Laura again. I told her about Rachel. About the text. The photos. The pattern. The mess that Amanda had thrown herself into. Laura was silent for a long time. Then she said she won't believe it. Not until he leaves her. And by then, she'll blame you for not warning her. "I'm not here to save her," I said. "I'm here to protect my kids." Laura exhaled slowly. "She called me yesterday, you know. Said she might want to come by next week. Just to see them. Just to say hi." Something cold crept into my chest. She wants to drop in like she's a neighbor checking on her plants? I asked. She said she misses them. That she's been crying. Did she ask what size diapers they wear? What formula they take? What songs help them sleep? No, then she doesn't miss them. She misses how they make her look. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. Not with fear. With clarity. She was planning her re-entry. Her redemption arc. One carefully staged visit to prove she cared. One smiling photo for social media. And maybe she thought I'd be so tired, so broken, that I'd let her walk back in without a fight. But what she didn't know was this: the man she left behind. He was gone. In his place was someone who had learned how to survive without her. Someone who'd grown sharper with every sleepless night. Stronger with every feeding. Someone who'd earned the title of parent 100 times over while she was out chasing the next thrill. And if she thought she could reclaim any part of this home without burning in the truth of what she did, she was about to learn what consequences feel like. She showed up on a Sunday. Didn't call. Didn't text. Just pulled up in a gray sedan with tinted windows like this was her house, her family, her story to rejoin at will. She walked up the front steps holding a gift bag, of all things. Like she was attending a baby shower she forgot she abandoned. I watched her from the kitchen window. I didn't move. I let her knock once, twice, 3 times before I opened the door. She looked different. Not broken. Not sorry. Just performed. Makeup flawless. Hair curled. Like she had rehearsed this moment in a mirror, convinced herself this was her redemption scene. "Hey," she said, eyes too bright, voice too smooth. "Don't hey me," I said. "What are you doing here?" She smiled like it was nothing. "I wanted to see them. I've been thinking a lot. I know I left suddenly, and I'm not proud of that. You didn't leave suddenly. You vanished. You abandoned 2 infants and ran off with your boyfriend. You left no note. No plan. You filed a false report on me. And now you show up with a gift bag like it's Christmas morning?" She blinked. The smile faltered just for a second. Then she pulled herself together. "I wasn't in a good place. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to ask for help. You knew how to book a hotel room," I said. "You knew how to lie to your sister. You knew how to disappear. So let's not pretend you forgot how to speak." She held out the bag. "I didn't take it. There's some clothes in here. A little stuffed animal. I saw and thought of them. They don't know you. You're a stranger with a soft toy." That hit her. I saw it. A twitch at the edge of her mouth. Maybe guilt. Maybe just annoyance that her script wasn't going as planned. "I've been talking to someone," she said, switching tactics. "A therapist. I'm working on myself. I realize now that I didn't handle things the right way. The right way. I laughed. You think there's a wrong way to leave your husband, but a right way to leave your children? Her eyes flickered. I think she expected yelling. Begging. Not this cold, steady truth pressing against her performance like a blade. I want to be in their lives, she said. They're still mine. No, I said flatly. They're not yours. You made that clear the day you chose yourself over them. I'm their mother, she said, louder now. You don't get to erase that. You erased it, I said, stepping forward. You. Not me. You were the one who walked out without looking back. You didn't even call when they got sick. You didn't send a message when I took them to the hospital. You wanted out, you got it. There's no do-over just because the fantasy got boring. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then, soft and bitter, you're punishing me. No, I said. I'm protecting them. From the woman who sees them as accessories. From the mother who only wants to show up when there's an audience. She finally lowered the gift bag to the floor, hands trembling slightly. I just want a chance. And I wanted a partner. They wanted a mother. We don't always get what we want. I closed the door. I stood there for a long time, forehead resting against the wood, listening to her heels click down the steps, the car door shutting, the engine starting. When I finally turned around, the twins were both awake in their playpen, babbling at each other like nothing had happened. Innocent, unaware, and safe. Because I kept the door closed. She might return again. She might send letters, show up in court, cry to her parents, spin a new version of events where I'm the villain and she's the survivor. But I'll have the truth. I'll have them. And they'll have me. Not a performance. Not a ghost. Just a father who stayed. 2 days after she left my porch, I got served. A plain envelope slid under my door while the twins were napping. Inside, a custody petition. She wanted visitation rights. Supervised for now. But it was written in the kind of legalese that tells you exactly where it's going, toward shared custody. Toward her crawling back into their lives, not because she earned it, but because she demanded it. The hypocrisy was suffocating. This woman, who hadn't changed a diaper in weeks, who walked away from her own blood like it was a purse she forgot at a restaurant, was now positioning herself as a devoted mother in court papers. The narrative had flipped. Suddenly, she wasn't the deserter. She was reclaiming her role. I called a lawyer that night, found one who had handled custody cases for fathers specifically. She read through the petition in silence, then said, "She's building a case to make herself look stable. Therapy, clean public appearance, sudden interest in the kids, it's all image. But you've got the advantage. Real-time care, documentation, timeline. Don't panic. Just prepare." So I prepared. I made copies of everything. Appointment receipts, pediatric notes, video logs. I started journaling every interaction, every nap, every night feeding, every bath. I recorded the twins reacting to me, smiling, reaching for me. I didn't do it for her. I did it because the truth was mine, and I wasn't going to let her lawyer paint over it with pretty words. But then something unexpected happened. Rachel reached out again, this time with a voicemail. She sounded different, not angry, not bitter. "I thought you should know, he left her 2 days ago, packed his stuff and ghosted. Classic move." She showed up at my place crying, believe it or not, blamed me for warning you, said you turned the kids against her. She's unraveling. I played that voicemail 3 times. He left her. Of course he did. Amanda wasn't special to him. She was another stop on his tour of destruction. She was a thrill, a season, a souvenir. And when the chaos stopped being entertaining, he did what he always does, disappeared. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt like karma spun around and did its work. But all I felt was fury, because even that didn't wake her up. She was still fighting me, still trying to claim what she abandoned, still using the law to barge into a story she chose to exit. She didn't want to come back for the twins. She wanted to be rescued from her own disgrace. And the only people who could give her that shiny, forgiven identity were the children she didn't care to call when they were crying at 2 a.m., soaked through their onesies, too feverish to sleep. I sat in the dark that night, watching the baby monitor. Both of them breathing steady, curled in opposite corners of the crib like tiny bookends. And I knew what had to come next. Court wasn't just about papers. It was about truth. It was about me standing in front of a judge, not as a bitter ex, but as the only parent who showed up. And when that day came, I wouldn't just fight to keep custody. I would fight to protect their memories. Because they deserve to grow up knowing what love looks like. Not the performance of love, but the relentless, unshakable, everyday kind. The kind that stays. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. That gave her time to craft her story. And she did. Glossy and rehearsed. Complete with a new wardrobe, therapy records, and a family counselor she brought into the picture like a prop witness. She posted a photo online, a filtered picture of her holding a random baby at some friend's brunch with the caption, "Healing, rebuilding, mom first always." The comments were filled with hearts and support from people who didn't know the truth. People who didn't see the night she walked out. People who weren't there when I had to rock both twins in my arms while one was burning up and the other wouldn't stop screaming. She was building sympathy, tension, a slow campaign to wash her hands of the choice she made and replace it with a redemption arc. But behind the scenes, she was unraveling. Rachel texted me updates, short, cautious ones. Amanda had been calling her non-stop since the breakup, flipping between rage and desperation. She was spiraling, not because she missed the twins, but because she had nothing left to project onto. The man was gone. Her fantasy was dead. And now she was crawling back to the only thing that could make her feel whole again. The image of being a mother. But images lie. Real motherhood is when you wake up to a soundless cry and know something's wrong. When you don't have time to panic because the bottle is burning and the baby is dry heaving. When you haven't eaten in 18 hours and your shirt's soaked and you trade your soul just to nap on the floor for 10 minutes. And she ran from that. Now she wanted back in. The night before the court hearing, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared of losing, but because I finally understood what I was fighting for. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't pride. It was peace. It was the right for my children to grow up without confusion. To not be raised in a tug-of-war between presence and performance. To wake up and know who would always be there. The morning of the hearing, I dressed the twins carefully. I didn't bring anyone with me. No audience. No fake support squad. Just a small bag with essentials and a folder thick with documentation. Amanda arrived 10 minutes late. She wore white, and for the first time she looked nervous. No eyeliner could hide that. She wouldn't look at me. Her lawyer spoke for her. I watched her avoid my eyes as the judge read through the file. As photos, timestamps, pediatric records were laid out. Her lawyer said she was in emotional distress at the time of her departure. Mine asked, did she seek help before leaving? Silence. Did she call the children at any point during her absence? More silence. Do you have documentation of a single purchase, formula, diapers, medicine during the time she was gone? Her lawyer tried to pivot, but the silence was louder than anything else in that courtroom. Then the judge spoke. Firm. Even. What I see here is a parent who has been present, consistent, and responsible. And a parent who disappeared and returned only after a personal crisis. Amanda finally looked at me. I didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just collapsed internally. I saw it. The moment she realized the script had flipped and there was no saving line left to recite. The judge ruled in my favor. Full custody. Supervised visitation. Scheduled. Monitored. Conditional. Amanda stood, nodded, and left the courtroom before I could even buckle the twins back into their stroller. That was the last time I saw her face to face. No breakdown. No apology. Just a woman walking out of a room like she never fully entered it. 3 months later, the twins turned 6 months old. They were sitting up now, wobbling like little penguins, one always stealing the other's pacifier like it was a game. They laughed more real, contagious belly laughs that made the walls of the house feel warm again. I had names on their sippy cups, socks that never matched, and the kind of sleep schedule that would make a soldier salute. But the house was calm. No perfume trails. No fake apologies. No staged returns. Just us. Amanda didn't fight the ruling. She attended 2 of her supervised visits, both awkward and mechanical, like someone trying to remember lines they never actually memorized. She brought toys they didn't want and tried to rock them like they were props, not people. The twins didn't cry when she left, but they didn't reach for her either. On her third scheduled visit, she never showed. No call. No excuse. Just absence. Again. And this time I didn't flinch. I didn't wonder. I didn't wait. I just picked them up, strapped them into the car, and took them for ice cream. Yes, I know they were too young to really eat it, but they squealed at the cold spoon tips. And for once, I got to laugh without guilt. That night, I put them to bed and sat on the porch. Not waiting, just breathing, reflecting. You know, people ask me sometimes, how could she do it? How could someone walk away from their own kids? And I've stopped trying to answer, because the truth is, it doesn't matter why. What matters is what comes after. I used to think betrayal was the worst thing someone could do to you, but it's not. The worst thing someone can do is leave you carrying love alone, to give you something as heavy and sacred as children, and then expect you to bear it without help, without closure, without even the dignity of truth. But I did it. I am doing it. I'm the one they call for in the night. I'm the one who knows which one hates peas and which one can't fall asleep without white noise. I'm the one who stayed. She left me with our newborn twins and ran off to her lover. No words, no regret. While I was losing sleep saving our babies, she chose lust over family. This wasn't just betrayal, it was pure disrespect for everything sacred. And still, we rose. The twins won't remember the chaos. They won't remember the day she didn't show up or the silence that followed. But they will remember this, a home that was whole without her. A father who never made them question their worth. A life built not out of revenge, but out of relentless, ferocious love. So if anyone reading this is standing where I once stood, chest caved in, hands shaking, watching the person you trusted walk out without a backward glance, know this, you are not what they left. You are what remains. And sometimes what remains is the strongest thing of all.